Margaret Thornfield was zip-tied to a folding chair on her own perfectly manicured lawn, screaming about property lines and sovereign jurisdiction as a county sheriff read her Miranda rights. A rogue drone hovered overhead, filming the entire spectacle while neighbors gathered behind the yellow tape. Meanwhile, the HOA's official Facebook page quietly changed its profile picture to a stock photo of a sunset with no caption and no explanation, just complete digital silence. 2 days earlier, she had slapped me with a $30,000 fine for quote-unquote tampering with protected conservation land. The real kicker was that the land wasn't even theirs. It never had been. My name's Daniel Harper. I own a modest ranch-style home on the edge of Pine Ridge Estates, which is a gated community where the fences are pristine white. The rules document is longer than War and Peace, and the HOA operates like a petty dictatorship, complete with printed agendas and laminated name tags for every meeting. I live a quiet life. I work from home as a software developer. I tend to my garden on weekends, and occasionally I like to fish in the creek that runs just beyond my backyard fence. That last hobby is where all the trouble started. Margaret Thornfield, our HOA president and self-appointed environmental guardian, decided that my peaceful Saturday afternoon fishing was actually a full-scale ecological assault on Mother Nature herself. She claimed the land behind my home, which was technically part of a long-abandoned railroad easement from the 1930s, was under the stewardship of something called the Pine Ridge Estates Homeowners Environmental Task Force. According to public records that I later checked, this task force doesn't actually exist anywhere except in Margaret's imagination. It all began with handwritten notes left on my door. These weren't just regular notes either. They were citations written in elaborate cursive on official-looking paper that she probably printed at home. The first one said, "Unauthorized incursion into protected soil." The second accused me of using improper trout bait that could disrupt the natural ecosystem. Mind you, I was using regular worms from the bait shop down the street. Then came the official HOA summons printed on letterhead that looked suspiciously like she made it herself in Microsoft Word. It was a formal complaint about my disruption of the biome, and she backed it up with grainy Polaroid photos of me standing in knee-high rubber boots while holding my tackle box. The photos were so blurry you could barely tell it was me, but she insisted they were damning evidence. She escalated things further by hiring a teenager with a GoPro camera to monitor what she called perimeter violations. This kid would sit in a lawn chair at the edge of the property line, filming me every time I stepped outside. She threatened to fine me $500 per day until I agreed to appear before the HOA tribunal, which apparently met in her garage under a homemade banner that read, "Welcome to Nature's Court." When I ignored her increasingly unhinged demands, she claimed the creek fell under Section 12 Subpart B of the HOA Charter, which supposedly covered buffer zones and community assets. She showed up at my door one evening with a manila envelope, handing it to me with a smug smile. Inside was a formal notice of lien against my property for $30,000. The document claimed I had committed over 60 separate violations of environmental protection codes that she had apparently invented herself. Each violation carried a $500 fine. The math was creative at best, but she insisted it was all perfectly legal and binding. She had even attached a payment plan option with a cheerful note saying she was willing to work with me if I couldn't afford the full amount immediately. The payment plan included a mere 20% interest rate compounded monthly. When I pointed out that this was usury, she said it was standard practice in environmental law enforcement, which again she had completely made up. The next week, she started leaving bright orange violation stickers on my fence posts, each one numbered and dated with increasingly bizarre infractions. Number 37 claimed I was disturbing nesting patterns of theoretical birds. Number 42 accused me of altering the water table by stepping too heavily near the creek. Number 58 said my fishing line created unauthorized aerial obstructions. She also began holding what she called emergency environmental sessions every evening in her driveway, complete with a portable microphone system that violated the neighborhood's own noise ordinances. She would spend hours reading from what she claimed was the Environmental Protection Act, but was actually just pages she had printed from various Wikipedia articles about wetlands. I had finally reached my breaking point. The next morning, I drove down to the county records office and filed a public information request about the land behind our neighborhood. What I discovered there made my jaw drop. That so-called protected conservation land was still officially registered to Southern Rail and Timber Corporation, a company that had gone defunct in the 1980s. The holdings had reverted to county ownership 20 years ago when no one claimed them. In other words, Margaret had been finding residents for violations on land that the HOA didn't own, had never managed, and legally couldn't regulate under any circumstances. She had no more authority over that creek than she did over the moon. I made copies of everything. The land deeds, the ownership records, the county tax assessments, all of it. Then I forwarded the entire package to the county commission, the sheriff's department, the state attorney general's office, and just for good measure, I sent it to our local news station that loves a good HOA corruption story. After all that, I grabbed my fishing pole and went right back to the creek. 2 days later, 3 county investigators showed up unannounced at the monthly HOA meeting. Margaret tried to shoo them away at the door, citing something about private civic protocol and closed session bylaws. One of the investigators, a no-nonsense woman in a dark suit, simply said, "Ma'am, we're not here for the HOA meeting. We're here specifically for you." The color drained from Margaret's face as they explained they were investigating complaints of fraud and misuse of authority. It turns out I wasn't the only resident she had targeted. Margaret had collected over $80,000 in various fines from different homeowners, all for supposed infractions on that same strip of county land. She had fined people for bird watching without permits, walking dogs off leash in protected zones, and even planting wildflowers that weren't on her approved species list. None of it was legal, and all of it was fraud. The investigators had already pulled her bank records and discovered she had been depositing these fines into a personal account labeled HOA Defense Fund, which she claimed was for legal expenses, but was actually funding her vacation to Hawaii and a new hot tub in her backyard. Warrants were issued that same day. Her bank accounts were immediately frozen by court order. The PayPal page she had set up for additional HOA donations quietly vanished from the internet within hours. The drone footage of her arrest went viral within 24 hours. There she was writhing on her pristine lawn in her custom-embroidered Steward of the Earth windbreaker, screaming about her constitutional rights while being loaded into a patrol car. The video garnered over 3 million views in the first week. The investigation revealed even more disturbing details. Margaret had forged multiple official-looking documents, including fake conservation permits with made-up permit numbers and a completely fabricated endorsement letter from something called the National Environmental Safety Board. A quick Google search revealed this organization didn't exist. It was just 4 random words she had strung together to sound official on her homemade letterhead. She had gone so far as to create an entire fake website for this imaginary organization, complete with stock photos of people in lab coats and a mission statement she had copied from the actual EPA website. The site even had a donation button that went straight to her personal PayPal account. Investigators found she had collected another $12,000 through this fake website from concerned citizens who thought they were supporting environmental protection. Her home office, when searched under warrant, contained boxes of fake certificates, counterfeit county seals she had ordered from a sketchy website in China, and a laminating machine she used to make her forged documents look more official. She even had a notebook where she practiced different signatures of county officials she was impersonating. She had also created fake email accounts pretending to be county officials, sending threatening messages to residents who questioned her authority. One elderly neighbor had paid her $2,000 just to avoid what Margaret claimed would be criminal prosecution for feeding ducks at the creek. Another family had sold their above-ground pool after she convinced them it was contaminating the groundwater, and they faced potential federal charges. The prosecutor charged her with 8 counts of fraud, 3 counts of impersonation of a government entity, unlawful collection of dues, and conspiracy to commit theft by deception. Each fraud charge carried a potential 5-year sentence. The impersonation charges added another 3 years each. Her bail was set at $250,000, which she couldn't pay because all her accounts were frozen. During the trial, which lasted 3 weeks, Margaret tried to represent herself after firing 2 different lawyers who told her to plead guilty. She insisted she was protecting the environment and that her actions were justified under what she called natural law and community stewardship principles. The judge was not impressed. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Margaret stood up and started shouting about appeals and constitutional violations until the bailiff had to escort her out. At sentencing, the judge gave her 8 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 4, plus mandatory restitution of all the money she had stolen. She was also permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. When the judge read the sentence, Margaret fainted and had to be carried out on a stretcher, still mumbling about environmental protection zones through her oxygen mask.